we're still living in MK Ultra time, because wherever there's trauma and the spread of information, wherever those two factors are, you're going to get a potential for MK Ultra, a potential for mind control programming, using the trauma and using the information to possibly control people in mass to do things against their will in order to achieve an overall objective that does not have their best interests factored in. So with that being said, let's enter into the realm of the programmer. We've talked about handlers before, the ones who physically try to persuade a target. These handlers also being assets, but they are also the creators of assets, taking regular civilians and transforming them into MK assets, into members of the hive, into a butterfly that flies mindlessly to a predetermined destination. Mindless travel, mindless arrival, a traveling without any directions is what an asset is particularly characterized by. Going from everything to the beta programming, which makes them more suggestible, more susceptible, but really more overtly expression in terms of maybe sexuality, in terms of appetite, in terms of drive, in terms of ambition, but also being in a theta state or a delta state that is very akin to and resembling deep patterns of sleep. All of these things, putting society to sleep, waking them up with trauma, keeping them engaged in mundane things, using routine, using monotony, using subliminal programming, subliminal stimuli. All of these things, all of the elements that pertain to the senses can potentially be weaponized as tools of MK Ultra. So in the realm of the programmer, and again, the programmer is the one who writes the software, the one who creates the triggers. So that's basically like the top wizard, top priest, type psychologist, not literally as a trade, but if we're to give an analogy of what their functions are, a programmer trains a handler to be a particular set of alters for a potential asset. So there will be the mental part, the spiritual part, the physical part. The physical part is usually using a relative through the military. That's the physical part, because the trauma bonding that takes place between you and a close individual can keep you trapped in a subnet that you can't get away from, and you can be held down by words such as family and words such as blood relation on the physical level to keep you trapped in the programming. Also, along with being trapped in that aspect of it, the handler, or rather the role that's assigned of the handler, along with being physically connected on a physical level, is mentally, so they can be a trained psychologist, a shrink, one who understands the mind of the asset enough to be able to program certain areas of the asset's mind to control them, to terraform them into being whatever the hive mind's goal is for them, to have a role assigned to them, as in Krypton, as in Kryptonian, as in Green, the Green Man, as in Pan, the woodland, the woods, the forest, the trolls. All of these things are new levels of MK Ultra programming that doesn't even need hands-on assistance, because the tools that are used for mind control are a constant in society. Various factors can control us. So the handler has to be able to control the asset on a mental level and then also on a spiritual level. So from relative to psychologist to priest, to challenge that person and terraform that person's beliefs, to influence them on a soul level. This is the trinity. This is the triangle. This is the delta of the MK Ultra programming that the handler is assigned to be as a as a tri-identity, a three-part identity, a trinity. In the realm of the programmer, finally, which encompasses all of that, is the programmer is the creator of the software. The programmer is the creator of the repetition. The reason why I'm saying we're in the realm of the programmer is because the overall grasp on where society is on a conscious level is so scattered now, where we can only truly be led with consistency by our own programming, our own repetition, our own discipline, due to the volatility of societal events currently. The only consistency that we could possibly rely on would actually come from ourselves as the individual human unit, the person that we look at in the mirror. But that person has to be a programmer because they have to be able to write the software. It's at that level, it's not about acquiring assets. We're not trying to change people. We are trying to change our reality. The people have free will to do what they will. But we are more responsible, more goal-oriented towards writing the software that will have an overarching control for ourselves and others. The realm of the programmer, the writer of the software. Can handlers be created from what you do? Can assets be created from the handlers based on what you do? Do you have a level of influence that will invoke imitation, emulation, etc., based on account of who you are and how you express yourself? These levels of influence become so anonymous and so magnanimous at the programmer level that the programmer is basically invisible. The programmers in society are not the ones you see. And they can be right in front of you as a programmer, but they're typically above the asset level. They're the ones that write the software. They're the ones who sit at the round table. And even those who sit up higher than they would be a programmer. There are multiple levels. This is so layered, and everything around us is possibly tools in this MK Ultra program that is perpetual. You have to think about, where did the Nazis get this from? And where did the people who gave it to the Nazis get this from? Well, if we want to be cosmological and mystical without necessarily being polarizingly biased, we could just say a negative evil force. We don't have to name it, but we can say that good and bad takes place, and everything that we can take in through the sensory stimuli can be enhanced or reduced based on good and evil, based on good and bad. The reason why I'm not saying right or wrong is because right or wrong is more so subjective, really dealing more with ethics than morality. But at the very basic core, to preserve self and to harm none, we're dealing with how MK Ultra affects society on the programmer level. You have to write your own software. How do you do this? You create a belief. And how do you create a belief? By making believe. And that involves pretense. You have to pretend. At first, really believe in what it is that you're pretending about. But you do have to play the part. You do have to, and maybe it's a bad thing to say fake it till you make it, but you have to jump into the character that you want to be in order to get the life that you want to have. Just assume it. Identify for yourself. You decide. You decide what the millionaire or the billionaire version of you is, the peaceful version of you is, the drama-free person, the drama-free part of you. You decide what that is. The longer you can stay in that character, the quicker the reality around you will be programmed to resemble that. Programming deals with controlling life itself on a societal level. It's not about handlers. When you're working light, it's not about handlers. And when you're working true magnetism, it's not about handlers or assets. You yourself are the handler of you. You handle yourself, and you are your own asset. So you have to be a top level programmer in order for self-governance to work well.